It's not often you see someone being rewarded for being normal on the internet, and this review is about someone who's achieving just that. Although her online career didn't start out that way. Cartoons Hate Her for years was the benevolent troll queen of the internet. She was best known for the comics, the cartoons she posted to Facebook. You may have seen some of these floating around the place. And for her A-grade shitposting to Reddit. She posed as hundreds of fake people, making posts usually on the subreddit Am I the Asshole that have been described as satirical storytelling designed to illuminate the stranger aspects of human nature. Which, let's face it, is just a wanky way of saying she was fucking around with people. One classic example, she pretended to be a bride who had grouped her wedding guests by the Harry Potter house she thought they belonged to and couldn't understand why people were upset about it.
Yes, couples were separated, but only for dinner. We didn't sort the children because I feel like all children lean Slytherin for a while, and you see very few Ravenclaw toddlers.
As with most of her posts in this vein, the comments section then took care of itself.
Getting to watch people talk about whether or not what I posted is real is one of my favorite things to do. Just watching people say like, there's no way this can be real, this is too crazy, and someone else says no. It could be real because my cousin did something almost exactly like this. I fucking love that.
She ended up getting permanently banned from Reddit, but she did manage to write a book about her exploits titled The Troll Handbook, Hundreds of Accounts, Hundreds of Bans, Hundreds of Posts, One Bored Girl. And while I am a huge fan of her style of harmless trolling and find it very, very funny, that's not what this review is about. Before we get started, let's get the explanation for her pseudonym Cartoons Hate Her out of the way, because it is kind of an odd pen name. It was one she adopted some years ago when her cartoons first started becoming popular.
Instead of using my real name, I used Cartoons Hate Her. And the reason for that was I just wanted something that sounded gimmicky and internet-y, and cartoons are what I do. And I stole the Hate Her from those spammy ads you might see. This is dermatologist hate her, local mom looks 25. Right. Yeah, so I did that and it just sort of blew up.
This is the kind of spammy dermatologist ad she's talking about. Cartoons Hate Her, or CHH, has continued to protect her full identity, but she has shared that in real life she's a 30-something married mother of two, self-described liberal and self-described failed writer. She worked in the tech industry for well over a decade, frequently getting fired from her jobs, apparently.
Without giving away too much information, for the past 13 years or so, I've worked full-time office jobs in a variety of departments. But one thing seems to be consistent. I always get fired, or laid off, or position eliminated, or whatever. The point is, it's almost never my choice.
Writing was always her passion, but not something that was working out for her. She wrote a novel a few years ago, which didn't do so well. But it's fair to say she's finally found success as a writer. Earlier this year, she started a Substack, which she describes as
social dynamics and online culture from the hybrid mind of a terminally online normie mom.
And I'm very, very glad she has, because I think she's filling an important niche, the normal discourse niche. And it's clearly hitting the spot for a lot of people. She recently gained enough paid subscribers that she was able to quit her day job.
My plan was that I would make, I don't know, a couple $100s a month that I could spend on like a date night with my husband, or, you know, new shoes. And then my husband couldn't get mad at me for it because I'd say, oh, it's for my Substack. I didn't use our credit card. Obviously joking, like he lets me buy shoes, but yeah, that was the plan. It wasn't supposed to be a job. I'd given up on that at that point, but then it just kind of grew much faster than I thought. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is actually looking like a real career, real salary. And so on Friday of last week, I quit my job and like put that all behind me. And I'm obviously not making as much money as I was before, but it's at the point where I think it could go in that direction, like relatively soon. So I'm very excited. And I hope I can keep doing this because it makes me very happy.
The Cartoons Hate Her Substack is now the third top humour publication on the platform. And while her writing is indeed funny, I think it's a lot more than that.
I like to think that Cartoons Hate Her represents the vortex that exists in the space between the normie lib mom world and the very online orchestra of delusion and obsession.
This is exactly what makes her stuff so good. She's bridging the gap between the real world, where most people are mostly normal, and the online world, where strange ideas seem to take hold, the most extreme voices get the most attention, and political identities are paramount and rigid. For example, one of Cartoons Hate Her's observations is that there's a weird attitude in certain corners of the internet that being a straight married woman with kids codes as right-wing or conservative.
First of all, it's a very online thing. Like if you go into the real world, which, I have to occasionally, my kid is in school, I go to pick up, I go to drop off, I talk to their parents. No one thinks it's weird to be married and to be a liberal. That's not a weird thing in the real world. That's just like normal. But if you go on Twitter, which I do a lot, and I say that I'm married and I am in this I don't even think my marriage is that traditional. It's just a normal marriage. Like, I don't know. My husband, I will admit, wears the pants in our relationship, but not in a way that's like, I'm not spanked or anything. It's not like weird. It's not, he just like, he makes a lot of the big decisions. It's fine. I like that because it takes the pressure off me and then I handle my stuff. It's fine. But like I say that and someone's like, there's no way you can be liberal. I don't believe that you're a Democrat. When I said that I wasn't voting for Trump, people got upset because they were like, you have children. How could you not vote for Trump? Like the idea that having kids or being married or being feminine or having kind of traditional gender roles means that you have to be right wing. I mean, you certainly can be, and I'm not going to police that. But like in the real world, I don't think that it means that. I think it's like marriage is a very typical thing, but online, I feel like it's become this like right-wing coded thing.
So I think that real world, normal person living a regular life grounding, mixed with her being very au fait with internet culture, gives her a really unique and compelling voice. Her Substack features a regular column called Many Such Takes on the most unhinged discourse of the week, which is always really entertaining, although if you are not a super online person, you'll probably find it incredibly baffling. A good litmus test for this might be whether or not you know who Dr. Smell is. If you do, you're probably a very online person, and if you don't, congratulations, you are healthily not. She also does some personal essays and some creative writing, which is also really great, but I personally think it's her writing on sex and relationships and family and culture that is the most valuable offering at her Substack and probably what has the broadest appeal. Because the online world, you may have noticed, has no shortage of people sharing their views on the topic of men and women. But a lot of those views are, shall we say, not for everyone.
Slap, slap. Grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex.
Stay out of my kitchen, and I will stay out of the workplace.
Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies.
You're not having sex? Great! Less babies are going to die! Hallelujah!
I'm Lily Paulette, and today I'm getting ran through by 100 guys.
There's a crocodile with a clock in its stomach chasing you, and it could easily turn you into a tyrant.
Normal people? I think we're a little left out. Meanwhile, in the background, we've got a crisis of falling birth rates in the West, and politically, young men and women are further apart than they have ever been. It's fair to say gender relations are not exactly at a high point right now, so finding someone who can navigate the complicated territory in this area without getting deranged about it is lovely. Let's start with this fairly recent piece by Cartoons Hate Her, which really resonated with me. Look, probably because I have 3 sons of my own. It was titled, What's Wrong with Boys? And the piece was, as you might have guessed, about everything that's wrong with boys these days and how they are falling behind girls in a number of measurable ways, in education, in employment, in physical and mental health. This is something that's widely acknowledged by society, but as CHH noted...
Of course, like most issues, this is nuanced, but people can't seem to be normal about it.
She's right. This can be such fraught territory. Sometimes it feels like saying anything sympathetic towards men can be misconstrued as being misogynistic or as rejecting the hard-fought gains of feminism or as minimizing the very real problems of things like male sexual violence. When really, I think most people are very aware of the problems that come with, toxic masculinity, but don't see masculinity as in and of itself toxic and don't see progress as a zero-sum game. We just want everybody to thrive regardless of their gender. And in writing about how difficult it seems for society to have a conversation about how we deal with this, I think CHH made a really good observation.
When you talk about children and the messaging children receive, you have to view the world from the eyes of a child. So imagine you're a little boy or even a teenage boy. Is our current messaging hitting the mark? When you say girls are strong and smart, or girls can do anything, or when you choose to buy a board book for your 2-year-old about famous women in science, you're doing this because you, as an adult, understand the history of women not being able to do anything. But I suspect that the current messaging around feminism, especially aimed at children, is confusing. That's not to say that sexism is over or that women are now in charge, but from the eyes of a child, say a 6-year-old boy faced with the message of female empowerment that exists within a great deal of children's media today, it's not always clear that this messaging is intended to rectify injustice. This little boy probably sees that most women in his life have some degree of, at least in his eyes, equal power. Perhaps his principal is a woman. His mother probably works, and so do his friends' moms. His mom's boss, even his dad's boss, might be a woman. Even his grandmother likely had a career, or at least the option to work. Does that mean that 0 women are oppressed or that the glass ceiling doesn't exist? Of course not. But a 6-year-old boy is not well versed in what percentage of the top CEOs are women, not many. All he sees, especially if he's a middle class or upper middle class child, is that women are in positions of power everywhere. When I was faced with messaging around gay rights, I understood why. The oppression of LGBTQ people was obvious in the 2000s and today. But I have a feeling that a lot of little boys don't understand feminist messaging because they see successful women all around, and in many respects, women have outpaced men.
Part of the reason I was so happy to read this piece, the whole thing is great, by the way, is because I think it's really important that we, the empowered women of today, grapple with these issues. I don't think it would be a good thing if those of us who are happy that women have come such a long way ignored the reality that boys are struggling right now. I don't want that ground ceded to the Andrew Tates of the world, to the misogynistic and toxic influencers who exploit the dissatisfaction that men and boys are feeling. I don't think that would be good for them, and I don't think it would be good for women. So I think liberal female voices like Cartoons Hate Her are really important in this space, and I am very grateful to her for chiming in. It's for similar reasons that I think her writing on sex and dating and relationships is also so valuable. And she goes a step further than what most traditional sort of love life columnists have done in the past. Carrie Bradshaw famously couldn't help but wonder in her columns for Sex in the City.
I couldn't help but wonder. I couldn't help but wonder. I couldn't help but wonder. I couldn't help but wonder.
But Cartoons Hate Her doesn't just wonder. She does actual research, as in she surveys sometimes hundreds of people to find out what they think when she writes about gender dynamics. By way of example, a few months ago there was some dumb internet chat about how wealthy men cheat on their wives with their nannies because they don't really want their wives to work. So Cartoons Hate Her did a 2-part piece looking at what wealthy men actually want and actually experience in their relationships, both married wealthy men and single wealthy men.
The sexual habits of highly successful men. People like to imagine what wealthy men's sex lives are like. So I talked to the men directly.
She spoke a bit about the surveys and research she did in this interview.
I did another survey on men who make more than $200K a year and asked them about the working conditions of their partner, whether their partner works, how much money she makes, whether she has a degree or not. And generally what I'm seeing from that survey, which comprised about 450 men, and about more than half of them were married, or at least half of them were married. So 200 some men who were married. And then also just the qualitative interviews I had with people is that most men want their wives to work, even when it's not like politically motivated. It's usually just like they want money. Even if they already have money, they want more of it, because the men I interviewed all were pretty high earners. So yeah, this article was talking about those interviews, and then there was a separate article that was talking about the survey. So it was interesting to see, because there were, I think the numbers were, of the men that were partnered and made over 200K, 77% of them had a partner who worked, and 90% of those men wanted their partner to continue working. And then when it came to the men who had partners who did not work, 70% of them wanted their partner to continue not working. So for the most part, couples were aligned, but couples were more likely to be aligned if the woman was working. So anyway, I found that interesting.
The articles themselves went into quite a lot of detail and analysis of her results. She had pie charts, she had graphs, and it was really interesting to see this response based on data to some of the kind of baseless bravado bullshit that we were hearing online. Granted, these aren't perfectly designed scientific surveys, as she herself admits.
Obviously, I am not a professional, so I'm sure plenty of folks will poke holes in my methodology.
But I still think that's a more significantly robust approach than just, this is what I reckon. And she is transparent about how she does her research, so you can judge for yourself as to how reliable or representative you think her findings are. The final cartoons hate her piece that I want to single out, and honestly I feel like I could single out almost every post she's ever made. They're just all really, really good. But I want to talk about this one.
How mean can you be to online strangers? Everyone gets a little sassy online. But what are the rules for just how mean you can get?
This was a really thoughtful and reflective piece on online interactions, which she based around an incident that had happened years earlier where she'd been a little bit mean to someone on Twitter who had then called her out for it.
My tweet actually wound up going a bit viral. The woman I screenshotted did, in fact, see it. She reached out to me and asked me to delete it, letting me know that it was clear I hadn't meant it to be hateful, but that it opened her up to people who were going to be hateful. She was surprisingly cool about it. I felt absolutely awful. I apologized, deleted, and the happy ending was that we followed each other, and she turned out to be a lovely, smart, and interesting person who is also a really funny poster. But the interaction taught me something, which was that even big accounts on Twitter are still just regular people. You can still hurt their feelings. At the time, I didn't anticipate that I might be in her shoes one day.
And I liked the piece a lot. Partly because she acknowledged that there is a little bit of room for assholery on the internet. That is part of the fun, and we don't need to wear kid gloves all the time.
I think we all agree it's okay to be a little mean online. I can spar with the red pill pickup artists and feel some degree of assurance that they don't actually hate me and just want to have some fun. I'll play along, it's fine.
But she was also nuanced about it, pointing out that one of the key considerations when it comes to these things is how big an account is, and also in arguing that personal attacks really should be out of bounds. That's something that she's spoken about a bit.
A lot of people make fun of Donald Trump, and I'm not opposed to doing it. I don't do political stuff, but I certainly have no problem with making fun of Donald Trump. But I always kind of twitch a little bit when someone makes a comment about his appearance, because I'm like, well, there are people who are overweight and they're going to see that and be like, oh, so I guess I'm a joke too, not that Donald Trump doesn't deserve it because he rags on other people's appearance all the time, but you have to be careful about making fun of something that someone doesn't control or and it's hard because it's also like, he of all people should be able to take it, but he's not the only person who has to take it when you make fun of him for being overweight. So I don't know. Those jokes are still kind of funny to me, honestly, but I personally wouldn't make them. I'd laugh at them, but I wouldn't make them. I'm part of the problem, probably.
In reflecting on the interaction she'd had all those years earlier, she noted that the motivation for people to be dicks online is usually just attention. Any kind of attention, even though that attention is usually negative.
That was what I wanted when I screenshotted that woman years ago. I wanted people to think I was funny. I wanted my observation to resonate with people, and I didn't really think about whether it was going to hurt anyone. I did this kind of thing all the time, and usually the big account in question didn't notice or say anything, and I never felt bad about it as a result. It was only after she spoke with me that I realized this wasn't a good way to get attention, and most people who are the targets of this type of negativity from small accounts are either rude in response or say nothing, so nobody learns anything from their mistakes, and I don't blame them because most people aren't willing to listen to the simple statement, hey, this is kind of hurtful. That woman was a real unicorn in that she actually changed the behavior of an online stranger without being rude herself. It's because of this interaction with her, I think twice before featuring anything on many such takes. Am I featuring someone who can take the heat, or am I platforming someone who really doesn't need the pile on? Maybe I still miss the mark sometimes, but I try. And it's why I have a rule that I will remove any screenshot from any post if the OP asks me to. No questions asked.
Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that because it's something that I really appreciate and wish we saw more of. I really respect people who engage in some self-reflection and who care about online culture not being completely devoid of manners. If you like what you've heard here, I really recommend you check out the Cartoons Hate Her Substack. She is also on Twitter if you want to get a little bit of a taste test first for what her attitude is like. As I said, I really particularly like her stuff around gender, relationships and parenting. I recommend her pieces titled "The Fertility Crisis is About High Standards," "The Men Who Send Their Wives to the Email Mines," "Are Car Seats Ruining the Birth Rate?" "The Boogeyman of the Detached Millennial Mum," "Is Monogamy Right-Wing Coded Now?" "Nobody Knows What Gentle Parenting Is," "The Rise of the Therapy Jerks." All of these are topics that can so easily be turned into clickbait or outrage fodder, but she writes about them in a really smart and thoughtful and funny way. I feel I should acknowledge before I go that part of the reason that I personally find Cartoons Hate Her so relatable is very likely because I share a very similar perspective of the world. I too am a married millennial mother who spends too much time on the internet. So a lot of what she writes about really speaks to me, but I do think it would speak to all kinds of other people too. And CHH actually did a reader survey recently which found that her audience is very evenly split by gender. So she's not just writing for the ladies, and her readers are mostly in their 20s and 30s, but they are a large number who are in their 40s and older as well. Her audience is mostly left-leaning, but again, there's a decent chunk of people who are centrist and right-leaning. So there's something there for everyone, especially if you're a normie. Well, it wouldn't be a review without Kenny interrupting us. Here you go, buddy. Righto. So Cartoons Hate Her gets ticks in all the boxes for my criteria. Yes, she's trustworthy. Yes, she's open about her incentives. Her main incentive was gaining enough subscribers to quit her day job, and I guess she's achieved that now. She definitely offers something of value to the discourse, and she's pretty accountable. She's quite engaged with commenters and open to feedback. So just to be clear, yes, this is a very strong recommendation to follow Cartoons Hate Her. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, if you have any suggestions or requests for people you'd like to see me review, you can leave that in the comments, or you can email me at theinternet@gmail.com.